Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Fun Corporation. We are here with the 1972 season, and I want to start this episode off with a notable addition that I didn't really bring in. So, down in LA at this point, so Funland located in Sacramento, in LA, Magic Mountain opened in 1971, and with Magic Mountain, their first coaster that they opened with, well, their notable coaster they opened with, was Gold Rusher, which is an Aero mine train. And in fact, if you play the RCT2 scenario of Six Flags Magic Mountain, Gold Rusher is indeed featured in that. But I just wanted to make sure to bring that ride up. Not concerned about that from our perspective at this point, just because we have our own Aero mine train alongside Cyclone. So not a horribly big competition note there on our end yet. I mean, with hindsight we have now, we know Magic Mountain ends up being one of the biggest players in the regional theme park game, or regional amusement park game, I should say. I wouldn't really classify Magic Mountain as a theme park. It's far and away an amusement park. But they become probably one of the biggest players in the amusement industry as we grow closer to the 90s and 2000s. So as far as these parks go, with Funland and Joyland, one thing I did not add for the grand opening of these two parks was a Ferris wheel. So what we're going to go ahead and do is go ahead and add 2 Ferris wheels into each park, and then a nice little seating area to go in front. So let's go ahead and cut on over into construction of the Funland Skywheel and the Joyland Skywheel. Alright, and with those 2 rides complete now, each park has a solid family ride added on to their portfolio of flat rides at each park. And I kind of like the little plaza I ended up building up on the Sky Wheels we have, where they're a little bit higher up, so they kind of stand a little higher. And then as you see, I did end up I set the rotations to 3, which is a terrible idea, because by the second rotation all those guests want to get off because of how long it takes to load a Skywheel. And if you've ever been to a park or have worked at a park and operated a Skywheel, you tend to know the more you fill those rides up, the more people tend to want to get off early and just throw you off. So actually with those Ferris wheels, if you're going to run it for more than one full rotation, it ends up being a better idea just to only partially load it, even if you have like a line that stretches a little bit further down. So if you're ever at a park and wonder why they're not loading the wheel completely, One, for balance, and two, by the time you fully load some of those Ferris wheels, most people want to get off because they've been on the ride for a very, very long time. All right, so since we are at the tail end of the 1972 season for the Fun Corporation Parks, let's go ahead and take a look at our finances. So in our finance tab here, you can see, again, the off-season going to be the hardest hitters for the chain as a whole, and Funland definitely takes some hits as we go on. One thing I would like to mention is at the end of this season from 1971 into 72, we did end up not clearing the park. So the park was still full of guests when we rotated over into the 72 season. So we kind of started around that 5,500 guest mark and stuck with it. And if you look here, we actually posted a decent profit in the month of January at Funland. As far as the company goes, Joyland sucked all those resources right back out because we have to pay our full-time staff down there because that park is seasonal. And we don't have any income because over in New York, the weather over the off season is not the friendliest to keep an outdoor amusement park open. You could definitely make an indoor one succeed in that area. However, seeing as Joyland is outside, we do not have the resources to make that viable at this time. But as we started to get into the more crowded years, the peak months, we posted a huge profit. Joyland proving to be a huge moneymaker when it is indeed open. The problem with Joyland being it is only seasonal, so we're going to have those periods of time where the park doesn't do anything, but it is most definitely making up for the time it is closed for the time it is open, which is exactly what you want. Funland, on the other hand, being a pretty major drain as we go. If I was actually running a chain, would I keep Funland open over the off season? Maybe not, based on the numbers we're showing here, but it would take a little bit more staff management. But with the fact that we are posting decent profits through the peak months, I am perfectly okay with leaving it open over the off season just so I have something to do over the time we are not open. So I mean, I'm overall pretty happy with our profitability. I mean, we're making money, which is the important thing across these two parks, and that's what you have to love the most with that. And now we'll go ahead and rotate on over into our ridership totals for this season. If we look at Funland's ridership totals here, not too far off of what we did the previous season. It's kind of interesting to see the way some of these end up fluctuating on and off. One thing to note with the coasters up top, you see Cyclone end up taking in quite a few more riders as opposed to the previous season. There's definitely going to be some skewing here because we didn't clear the park, so we started out with way more than we had at the beginning of the 71 season. So 72 is going to be skewed a little bit more on the positive side, again, just because we had a little more time, or excuse me, a few more guests in the park already when we started. As far as running the coasters goes in this situation, in this scenario, during the non-peak months, I have been running at least Cyclone. I ran with 2 trains during the non-peak season. Carabel, I ran 3 train most of the time, outside of the month I have it closed for maintenance, so it can get rebuilt. But Cyclone ran 2 trains throughout its off season. Then we flipped it to 3 when the crowd started to really come in to get that throughput going and get guests on rides, because that's what you want the most. You want your guests to get more rides per day than other parks. You want to make sure you're delivering a very good product to the guests that you do have, and that they are constantly getting some rides in throughout the day, because that's going to bring up your favorability in their eyes. And in my eyes, when I go to a park, I want to make sure the lines keep moving, because I don't ever get bored standing in line. And the longer you have people standing in line not moving, is longer that you do not have them out in the paths roaming around to then purchase things or look around and do all that other stuff as well. Now, if we go down over into the Joyland total riders, White Cyclone's ridership went down, and the main reason for that is I only ran that with 2 trains. You may be wondering why I only ran that with 2 trains, and the reasoning is I don't have a reason. I just forgot to flip the 3rd train back onto it. So White Cyclone looks way off just because I didn't end up running it with the 3 trains. Salem Lake is in the same boat as White Cyclone, although Salem Lake is limited to 2 trains. It doesn't have that 3rd block, so I don't run it with the total amount of trains that Carabel does. So on top of Funland being year-round, The capacity of some of the coasters at Joyland, especially this season, was not nearly as good, so it slowed way down. But our profitability at Joyland is still phenomenally good for what we have. Another thing that astounds me with this game, in particular, is the amount of guests that the transport rides just, push through. Because, I mean, the monorail we have at Funland pushed over 250,000 guests through this season and the previous season. And the railroad at Joyland pushed over 120,000 guests through its doors and got them around the park. And I just find that really interesting, how many guests those transport rides, one, hold, and two, the way the guests queue up for them and get rotated around the park. Because the railroad at Joyland, operating seasonally, is already almost at 250,000 total riders without being open year-round and just seasonally. In fact, the railroad, or the sky rides over at Funland and Downtown Airway, our monorail, are already pretty darn close to 1 million total riders, and I just find that very, very interesting. Alright, and for this episode, I'm going to go ahead and just cut out the shop and stall popularity. If that's something you guys want to see, let me know, but I just don't think it's really something that's going to change that much over time, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave it out. But what I want to do at this point, near the tail end of these episodes and these seasons, is talk about the notable coasters that opened of that season. So we're going to go ahead and look at the notable coasters of 1972, at least for me. And for this episode, I have 3. So we're going to start with Rock and Roller Coaster, and that opened in 1972 at Opryland, USA in Tennessee. A reason that is notable is just because that was a big park located in Nashville, Tennessee, that no longer exists. It actually played a pretty big role in the amusement industry at the time. Because, I mean, with hindsight, they ended up opening the second of the Aero Corkscrews, Knott's being the first, and then Opryland had the second with Wabash Cannonball. And it's very unfortunate because this is a park that I think would have been really cool to visit in this age, and I really wish I had gotten a chance to visit it when it was operational. Another coaster I want to talk about at this time is, if I don't butcher the name, is Dexter Fribish's electric roller ride, later known as Excalibur, at Astroworld. This is a very interesting coaster because I feel like it's a giant mine train that was 88 feet tall, and I think it kind of laid the groundwork for rides like Gemini and Excalibur at Valley Fair, being that it's a mine train but not in the traditional sense, because it rises up and it stays above the ground for a large majority of its layout, and it just kind of meanders around. But it's the first time that I'm aware of that Aero really branched their coasters to be above the ground, because with a lot of their mine trains, they stay low to the ground and really don't leave for very long, if at all. Meanwhile, this ride was off the ground for a majority of its layout, and I feel like it kind of maybe built Aero's confidence in building taller a little bit. Now, the last notable coaster I want to talk about, and I feel like if you know 1972 and you're from the Cincinnati area, you should know this one. In 1972, Kings Island opened the Racer, its twin-tracked racing roller coaster. This wooden coaster rises 88 feet into the air and runs at speeds of 53 miles an hour. And at a time where roller coasters were really starting to fall by the wayside and the industry was at a pretty low point, it drew a lot of people to Kings Island, and a lot of people rode the Racer, and it really ignited the interest in roller coasters again following decades of decline. And I mean, it just is instrumental for the way the industry ended up turning out throughout the 70s, and it really led to, I think, the renaissance of roller coasters, where you got the tallest, the fastest as time went on. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and call the 1972 season to a close with the Fun Corporation. Thank you for tuning in for this episode. If you have anything you'd like me to talk about, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in.